And here we are at the Rafferty Mills Connection with my very special guest. Now, as an individual, he's a voice actor who's worked in all sorts of games, such as Sonic Adventure, Cold War, and Half-Life, not to mention that he's a musician in a band, Uncle Boogie. He's also been a radio professional, having started in 1975, but as a video game character, he's got balls of steel. Yes, allow me to introduce to you the man who voiced the legendary character Duke Nukem since the hit game Duke Nukem 3D hit the shelves all those years ago. It's Jon St John, ladies and gentlemen. John, how are you doing?
Great. I guess if I don't talk like this now, it'll be a letdown.
I'm great, Nick. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. John, I'd just like, from all of our listeners, thank you for taking part in this interview.
Oh, don't mention it. It's my pleasure.
Now, apart from being well known obviously for Duke Nukem himself, you made your start in radio as a voice actor. How did you initially start voice acting?
Voice acting came to me actually through a radio job. I was recording a commercial for a client, and a friend was tagging along who happened to be a casting director by the name of Lonnie. And Lonnie said, wow, you have really good vocal range. Would you be interested in acting in CD-ROM games? I said, well, sure. What have you got in mind? And she, in fact, the very first role I auditioned for was Duke Nukem.
Did you have any influences going into radio?
I did. Here in America, Gary Owens, who was a radio disc jockey for many years and appeared on a TV show back in the 60s and 70s called Laugh-In. He was a fellow who'd cup his hand to his ear and go, "It's Laugh-In with Dan Rowan and Dick Martin." And I used to love impersonating him, and I think that's what led to me getting into radio.
Do you think radio has changed significantly compared to when you initially started? Because I know you were a DJ. You did a countdown show, I believe, in...
You know what? I did a lot of countdown shows. I can't even remember every place I did them. But to be honest, yes, radio has changed quite significantly. I'm very fortunate to have been a part of radio back in the 70s, 80s, and a little bit of the early 90s, when radio really was a free-form art form, you know, with every personality having selection over what songs they played, how they'd introduce them, what topics they wanted to speak on. Unfortunately, in this age of computers, that all changed because computers then could be used to select all of the music in advance. And then later on, computers became automation systems for radio stations, so there was no longer a need for a live disc jockey.
Yeah, I guess, because now that somewhat iPods have been taken over, because people can now choose their own music, kind of the music shows are dying out. Do you think that's quite disappointing? I mean...
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Because you'd get a different perspective from everybody, every different personality who was on the air. And you know, if you grew up with radio back in the 70s and 80s, you know that music wasn't instantly accessible. You couldn't just have whatever song you wanted at any moment. It was exciting to listen to the radio and wait to hear those songs that you like so much. Now, in this age of instant gratification, I don't know how that much enjoyment can be derived from radio listening any longer when you can have any song you want on your iPod or download it instantly.
Now, you were hired as a production director for many radio stations. First of all, what exactly is a production director?
Well, that's the guy who has to meet with the clients, get their ideas for what they want their commercials to sound like, and then actually produce the commercial. Put the voice down, put the music to it, add the sound effects, mix it all together, make sure it was exactly 30 or 60 seconds, and make it ready for on-air delivery, whether that was on a tape cartridge or loaded into a computer system. The production director oversees all of the commercial production.
And do you think this gave you an advantage in your, well, I guess your future career as a voice actor in any way?
Absolutely. Over 30 years of radio broadcasting and having to try to come up with as many different voices as I could for different projects and acting out little parts that I would write in commercials. I developed many different character styles and announcer styles to accommodate the needs that I had. For instance, if you don't mind me giving an example here, perhaps you're not familiar with the term 50s newsreel announcer. A 50s newsreel announcer would be something to the effect of, "And now we see the troops on the beach at Normandy as the invasion began." Sounds familiar, doesn't it, from the old-time films? Everyone in the 50s seemed to talk like this. And then, of course, there's 1930s style voiceover, which was very poor quality and In the 30s, they'd always use expressions in the films like, "Why, I ought to pound you." So that's my little 1930s movies impressions. So anyway, I do various different styles of announcers and such from having done so many commercials and having to create characters that sounded different from each other. And that really did lead to my vocal abilities and capabilities in doing video games.
Now, we've got to get on to the man himself, Duke Nukem.
Oh, yeah.
How did the whole Duke Nukem experience come about?
Well, that casting director came to me and said, you know, you have really good range. Have you ever considered, I should say, doing CD-ROM games? I said, well, no, I didn't even realize that was an industry. She said, yes, it's a budding industry. This was like 1993 or 4. And they had a game coming out in 95 that they wanted to start recording called Duke Nukem. And she said, here's the deal. He's a badass. He's going to kill aliens and save babes. So we want somebody who's macho. We were thinking somebody dirty, hairy, kind of like Clint Eastwood. Can you do Clint Eastwood? And I said, go ahead. Make my day. She said, you know, that's the right attitude and the right tonality. But Duke is a big, muscular, heavy dude, so his pitch would be lower. And I said, go ahead, make my day. And she said, okay, I think we found Duke Nukem. They presented the recordings of the demo to 3D Realms, and bada bing, bada boom, I became Duke Nukem.
I guess as a voice actor, though, you must have a lot of range of voices for any kind of role to approach it differently. Did you have any kind of original voice that you thought was right for Duke Nukem before changing it, or was that just the voice that you found?
That's just what happened, just as I described it right there. They said, okay, that'll do. And I've just tried to keep true to that voice over the years. As long as I can remember to keep my teeth gritted, it usually comes out okay. It's like Duke is always so angry.
Going into the project itself, did you have any problems with some of the controversial aspects of the game, like the violent, swearing, sex references? I mean, you know, it was an adult game, I guess, but did you have any problems kind of with the dialogue, maybe? Or
not only no, hell no. No, I actually enjoyed it. I'm somewhat of a potty mouth myself, so I had no problem. In fact, I helped with some of the phrases and expressions that were used in the game. And I don't know if you're a Duke Nukem fan, you may have heard the outtakes over the years. Those were sophomoric humor at best, my attempt at being funny, and it was over the years. Those were sophomoric humor at best, my attempt at being funny, and it was very much potty humor. So, you know, I'm very juvenile at heart. I had no problem with the dialogue at all. In fact, I fucking loved it. Oh, you're going to have to edit that.
Oh, no. You've got to keep that in. I love it. Yeah, we're uncensored. We don't edit ourselves.
Uh-oh. Oh, well. Oh, that's great. Then let me just say, your face, your ass, what's the difference?
Duke Nukem 3D has had its share of criticism over the year from parental groups, suggesting that the game apparently, promotes pornography and murder. Now, I know Media Watch did this big thing about it. Now, what is your feeling about that criticism? And at the time of the game's release, did you suffer any kind of backlash from anyone about the game's content and your role in it?
I didn't personally, but I can tell you at the time of the game's release, I had 2 young children who were getting into computers and wanted to see the game Daddy was on, and I allowed them to play Duke Nukem. Why? It has a parental lock mode, and when you enable that, Duke says nothing foul or obscene, and you don't get to go into the strip club, which you were referring to as pornographic a moment ago. And I think parents who don't take the time to secure what their children are watching, you know, that's their problem, not the game maker's problem.
Yeah, I've got to completely agree with you. Now, what were your feelings on the game when it eventually came out? Did you think that they could have done anything better, or were you even surprised about things that they included in?
Oh, no, at the time I thought it was great. Doom was so big, and this was the same game engine, basically. But Duke brought personality to a game that had been just a shoot-'em-up, bloody, gory game, and actually gave him a